Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're excited to welcome parents, students, colleagues, members of the community to Smith Cotton High School. Tonight, we are going to talk about our work implementing a competency-based education program here at Smith Cotton High School. We understand this is a new concept for many of you, and tonight's event is designed to answer questions, clarify misconceptions, discuss how our educators are learning while starting to implement this process, and provide insight to the CBE and how it will support students' learning and ultimately better prepare our students for their futures outside of Smith Cotton High School. Tonight, you're going to hear from two groups: our staff, those who have jumped in and began the journey in their classrooms, as well as an expert from Dr. Robert Marzano's team, who we have partnered with to help us understand the broader picture and the research behind this approach, while also staying true to Smith Cotton High School and Sedalia 200. This panel is the brainchild of our CAP students. Students have seen our work from the very first days of our CBE journey. They have watched us succeed and fail, and they felt this panel would be a great way to help get the word out about our journey. I want to thank the 4 students for investing in us: Charlotte, Bridger, Morgan, and Jameson. And the older I get, the more emotional I get when I talk about students, so I apologize. Your dedication to learning alongside us shows us this is the right path. So I would now like to introduce Charlotte Fisher and Morgan Withers. They will be your facilitators this evening.
Good afternoon, everybody. First off, I want to say thank you for coming. My name is Morgan Withers. I'm a senior here at Smith Cotton, and I'm a part of our school's CAPS, Center for Advanced Professional Studies program, in the Engineering and Manufacturing strand.
I am Charlotte Fisher. I'm a junior here at Smith Cotton, and I am also part of CAPS, but I am a part of our Digital Media and Technology strand.
Yes. And so our panelists tonight include teachers who are implementing CBE and a guest expert who has worked closely with Dr. Marzano on the High Reliability Schools framework and has taught within the First Marzano Academy High School certified for competency-based education. Our panelists include Alicia Maggart, Queen City CAPS communication coach; Mindy Gray, Queen City CAPS digital media and technology instructor; Carissa Beck, English language arts instructor; Bridger Belknap, a Smith Cotton junior; Jameson Severa, a Smith Cotton senior;
Cameron Henderson, our business instructor; Tessa Childers, our math instructor; and David Meyer, one of our science instructors. And here from Marzano Academies is Ashley Avila. The purpose of this event is simple: to provide clear, honest answers to answer the questions that we know parents and the community members are wondering about as we begin this really big shift in our community. We've prepared a few key questions to guide the conversations, as we have accepted questions from the field via survey. If a question arises this evening, please see Ms. McKinney at the media table or submit questions virtually. She will compile additional questions that we can address as time permits. If your question is not answered, we will respond to you via phone or email in the coming days.
Ms. McKinney, can you please raise your hand? Everybody turn around. That's who you need to go to. Okay, so let's start with our first question. What is competency-based education, and how is it different from traditional learning?
Okay, I'm going to take this one. And I've been given a lot of pressure. They label me as an expert panelist, so I got to get this right. So the simplest way that I think I can put it to the people kind of joining us in the crowd is most of us probably experience school in a traditional setting, which is every student learning everything the same way on the same day at the same time, right? And competency-based education looks to take some aspects of teaching that are working, which is setting standards and holding kids accountable, and then it gets rid of some things that are getting in the way, which is not every kid learns everything the same way at the same time on the same day. I like to give the analogy that I have 2 children. They're both happy and healthy and thriving, but one walked at 8 months and one walked at 12, right? One could talk at 2 years, one talked at 16 months. So not all kids can acquire knowledge at the same rates and to the same depth. So competency-based education holds all students accountable to the exact same set of outcomes, but it removes elements such as time-based. So some kids in a competency-based system might actually accelerate and finish courses faster than a semester, right? They may be able to finish at a quicker pace because they understand that content more deeply or quickly than others, whereas some may take additional time. What we're not going to do in a competency-based system and say, time's up, you learned half of this, but we're moving on to something else. Okay, and traditional education has a way of doing that. In a competency-based system, we may say, hey, we're starting a new semester, but guess what's still coming back around in semester 2? All those things I really needed you to learn, because we can't continue to move on because time is up when we know kids aren't learning the things that they need to be learning to be successful, either in their next high school courses or, of course, when we leave high school and we go into the workforce or the college setting. So that is a very tiny snippet, but to summarize, competency-based education is a journey away from one-size-fits-all teaching and learning, and it's a personalized approach that meets students where they're at and aims to teach them at the level and speed that's appropriate for their learning.
Thank you, Ashley. For our second question, why is our high school moving towards a competency-based education model?
I've had the pleasure of being in this district for 28 years. I've had the honor of being an administrator in this district for 23 years. I have watched students succeed and walk over the path of graduation and be able to succeed at several paths, being a career ready, being college ready, being work ready. But I've also seen students who have not found their passion and who have been roadblocked because when they've walked into that classroom, they already know that they haven't or aren't ready to meet those standards, and they know they're going to get passed on. That is one of the reasons when I look at students, I want this competency-based education plan. I want those students to be able to learn at their pace. And I want those students to not be held back in a classroom because they're ready to move on. And I want those students that need more time to be able to have that more time. That's the simple answer. I want our students to succeed at whatever their future is going to be. And I think our students can. But in a traditional path, I have seen a system roadblock us into believing that you're only successful if you have an A. If you're only at this level, if you've only hit this. That does not mean success. That does not mean that you fully understand the standards within the classroom. That means you have complied with the assignments and the tasks that those teachers have provided you. But as I put Bridger this fall in a classroom full of parents and teachers, I kind of put him on the spot and I said, what's your grade in math? He gave me his grade at that point, and I think I said, tell me what that grade means. What does that A, that B, that C, that D? We know what F means. F means you've failed. But what does that D, that C, the B, the A tell you? Right now, it's very difficult for our students or our parents to understand what that actually means. And now that we're going to focus on those standards and we're going to judge those students on that continuum of a standard, those students can go back and look at that scale based on the standards that we're teaching and say, here's where I am, and if I want to get better, here's where I've got to go. This is the step I'm missing. It's not just I need to get an 18 out of 20 on my assignment to get to that next grade point that I want. It is I am missing this point, and I know what I need to practice. I know what I need to do to actually understand and meet that standard. That's what I want, because then those students can come home and they can have conversations with their families, and they can say, this is where my weak spots are, this is where my successes are. That is a student who is ready for the next step after high school. That is a student who is ready to do whatever they want to do, no matter what it is. If that student can understand where they're at and can understand how to get to that next step, those kids are college and career ready. And that is something that I think that this high school and I think this staff and these students in this community deserve, and that's why we're moving down this path. Thank you.
Additionally, as a student here at Smith Cotton, Jameson and I started this ongoing project to look into CBE and further understand it our junior year during our civic engagement project. We essentially said that we felt Missouri high schools were not preparing students properly for higher education in the workforce. We interviewed teachers within our district, we interviewed a college recruiter, and we had gotten a lot of feedback through that, which basically proved our point that the students who are getting the A's and getting the B's and stuff, they know how to play the game of school. And so being able to change to CBE gives all the students equal opportunity, not just the ones who know how to play the game. We'll move on to our next question, though. What will teaching and learning look like in a CBE classroom on a daily basis?
All right, I think I'm going to take that one. When they showed me this question, I was like, "Oh man, they gave me the hard question right out the gate." The honest answer, because that's who I am, is I'm not sure yet. We're all just kind of starting this, and some of us have more experience than others. I will say, from what I have read, from what I have experienced so far, I'll split this into both teaching and learning. I think those two are two totally different things. So learning, I think, will change either a little bit or it will change a lot for students. And I think it depends on the classroom that they're in. Same thing with teaching. I think teaching could change a whole lot for some teachers, may totally change the way they do things, and others, it won't have much effect at all. And I know that's like really, really vague and not a great answer, but let me explain a little bit more. So I think what we're going to end up seeing as far as student learning goes is we're going to end up seeing a student-led classroom where students are going to be able to recognize what they know, what they don't know, and are able to explain those things to their instructor, and then be able to focus on how can I improve to get where I want to be. And I think that could be a giant shift in some classrooms, and in other classrooms, they've been focusing on that for a long, long time. There are some classrooms where focusing on improvement has been the goal and will continue to be the goal for a long, long time. As far as what teaching looks like, once again, it might be totally different, but I think teachers will focus on student improvement more, and that looks like being more of a facilitator sometimes instead of being somebody just doling out information. They're going to be questioners. They're going to be facilitating the learning and helping students along. They will be resources for those students, directors, and give students some maybe a little bit of direction, but not necessarily being like, this is how you do it. Now go practice it and tell me you can do it now. It's going to be a shift in being student-led instead of maybe the teacher being the one doing all the telling. The students will be the ones asking the questions. The students will be the ones with their focus. And so my whole idea of this is I want the students in my classrooms to be able to focus on the learning and how much they are learning and how much they are improving more than even what do I know, how have I gotten better? And if you just continuously ask yourself, how can I get better? What can I do to get better? I think the learning part kind of takes care of itself. I think that's my answer to that.
No, I think Dave did a great job. I just want to add, because I had the pleasure of visiting classrooms today. In fact, I visited the classrooms of everybody who's up here on this panel today. Something that I was really struck with was just the intentionality. When I walked into these classrooms, I had no idea what they might have been doing, but it took me less than 30 seconds to say, oh, okay, they're doing this for this reason, right? And so that's something that I think as a student, and I hope some of our students will speak to this, that's something that kids have always lacked in education. I may sit down quietly and do what my teacher gave me because that's what you do when you're a respectful young person. But I saw kids today going up to teachers saying, okay, I'd like to take my test now, I'm ready. Okay, so think about the idea of like, we don't have a high stakes testing day anymore. We have kids intentionally saying, I've learned enough, I'm ready to be tested on it, and requesting to be tested so that they can prove that they know the things the teacher expected them to. I saw that in all of these classrooms, right? So like just to think about how is teaching and learning going to change, Dave hit on the best point, which is the students are going to start driving it. If they want to know more about something, they're going to ask for it, and the teacher will provide it. If they think they've learned enough, they're going to say, I think I've learned what I need to learn. Can I be tested now so that I can prove that? And teachers were saying, yep, sure thing, right? And if they didn't learn everything they had to, there was such a sense of, but that's okay. A girl told me today, I did terrible on my test, but that's okay, because my teacher helped me, and I did a couple more modules, and I came back and I passed it the next time. That's okay. Right? So like that's going to shift the way that teaching and learning happens here. The kids are going to be driving and speaking up and asking for the things that they want and they need, which is very different from the passive way that we've traditionally done education.
Our next question is, what is a proficiency scale and how will it be used to assess students' learning?
I'll go first. I think Cameron's going to speak a little. I'm in the CAPS program, so we have a little bit different scenario. We're out there with real-world situations, and we're using our Vision of a Graduate scales that are on the board as predictors for what we want them to know. For me, a proficiency scale is a learning progression of knowledge, right? And I think that's kind of the textbook answer. It's the skills and the abilities that a student will provide evidence for. But for me, a proficiency scale gives me the ability to ask a student what they know and gives them options to show me what they know. And that, I think, is the beauty of all of this. It doesn't have to be a 5-paragraph essay all the time. It doesn't have to be a test all the time, right? There's different situations for all of that. For so long, we have given kids the exact prescription of their work. Fill this out, put this here, write this now, say this now. Now, through the same instruction, kind of what Dave is talking about, through the same instruction and direction, students can do the learning instead of simply complying.
And to add to that, another way to look at it is you have this priority standard, which means of the standards you are given, this is probably the brute of the unit. And within it, you have this priority standard, but you don't really break it apart and know within that unit or that priority standard what it is that you're supposed to gain from it. So you break it from 0 to 4, 4 being the advanced, 3 being the target, 2 being you're almost there, and 1 being with assistance, and then 0, which is no evidence. So within that standard, you are able to see at the 2 level, these are vocab words, these are simply put terminology that you should gain from this priority standard. 3 is the standard itself at what the target is, what you are supposed to accomplish from it. 3.5 is you're almost there, and 4 is you went above and beyond that target. So those are for those students who always want that challenge. So it can look different per student what the scale is necessarily. And then I know the second part of the question was, how do you assess student learning? So that's where it is. You might have students who are still at that vocabulary level. They haven't quite hit that target. Whereas on a typical basis, you might give them a B because you think, well, they didn't quite deserve the A, but you don't really have anything to justify it other than you just kind of think, well, they weren't there. The priority standard and the scales kind of let you see within that, within that unit or within that standard, this is where they still need to work on, this is where they're almost at, and then when they hit that target, then you know they've mastered that section. Sorry for the rant, but like it's different per student, but it just kind of lets you figure out where specifically within it they are versus just thinking maybe they deserve a B, maybe they're an A. So.
Thank you for your answers. Our next question is, how will students' progress be measured in a competency-based system, and how is it different than what has been happening now?
I'll go ahead and answer this one. In the past, in all my years of teaching, I've said your assignment is due on this day and I'll grade it on this day. And those assignments start to pile up and students don't get instant feedback right away. But in the when I scale them, and so I'm in the classroom and I'm also a CAPS instructor, and so in my classroom it's been really nice. So the students will say, "Hey, Ms. Gray, I'm ready to be scale scored," and they have instant feedback as soon as they are done. I give them their feedback, and they either realize, yeah, I didn't make this scale, and I'm going to go back and can I fix this? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely, go fix it, make it better. They can see instantly what they've did wrong. And if they got the scale score that they want, then they're free to go on to the next one. Right now in my class, I have some kids that are, still on Illustrator because they just haven't quite mastered it, and that's perfectly fine. And others have moved on to Photoshop already. In CAPS, they're working on projects constantly, and now they've realized that they really are kind of scaling themselves. All their projects just lead to scales and the learning targets that they need to meet. And it's very, like, we just have a simple conversation. It takes 5 minutes maybe. It's really not a big deal. They instantly see. Kind of relates back to the workforce and real world. Like in the real world, like Mr. Norton doesn't come to me and say, "Yep, you got an A. Here's your 100%." I still have standards that I have to follow and that I get scale scored on. So it's kind of real world for them, and they can see instantly. It's just that instant feedback I think that we have missed in the previous way we've taught things. So as a teacher, it's been very rewarding to give that instant feedback back to my students so that they can see that and improve right away.
I'll add just a little to that. As a English teacher for many years in the classroom, I I get a lot of just tell me what to do, and I did it. Isn't that good enough? The answer is no longer simply completion. We want to know what they know, and so for the first time in many classes, mine included, a grade will represent what they know, not just what she said. I graded it today. Today's the day you have to turn it in and be done with it, and you can never go back and get that again. And so I feel like the huge change, and it was a big deal for them, a big deal, and you're going to hear from them next to see that, because they just want the A. And we had a lot of tears early this year in CAPS with students about, well, if I'm not going to get an A, I'm going to go back to the high school where I know I can get an A. And so we really had to work through some of that. We want to give A's. We want everybody to have an A, but the grade is so not important to the rest of their lives. And I think they're going to get ready to talk about that. So
I think one piece, as educators and the experts within the classroom, I mean, that's what we have in our classrooms. We have experts in those fields, and I think sometimes in traditional classrooms, those teachers get bogged down with the assignment. They get bogged down with the assignment and then having to take it home and grade that assignment. And what they lose is that personal touch. Now those students, they're responsible for building and keeping their evidence. And then the teacher is allowed to have a one-on-one conversation with those students. You heard 5 minutes. In 5 minutes, that teacher can get more information, engage more, because they're the expert in the field. They can gauge more using that scale and having that one-on-one conversation with a student than they can grading an essay that a student might have wrote 2 weeks ago, or a quiz that the student might have guessed and got 80%, but still didn't understand the concept. You can't fake a conversation. And I think that's where we want to bring that strength back to our educators. We want to bring that power back to our educators. And I think they would all agree this is working them harder from 8 to 3, but they're actually getting some downtime from 3 to 8. So, and probably not as much as they could get as we go through this, because we're still learning too. So we're doing that learning after school. So that's just another way to look at it. It's those conversations and allowing those teachers to have that one-on-one conversation with students.
So kind of adding on to Miss Maggart, For me, switching to competency-based system, it's been a lot. I've learned a lot more. I'm not jumping through like hoops and hurdles to do what the rubric says to do, just so I can get an A. Like I don't have to write an essay to show I know something. I just have to like have a conversation with them, and it's been a lot easier, and I get to learn a lot more without being worried about my grade. So.
Will students still receive letter grades, GPAs, and transcripts that colleges understand? There has been this statement that this type of learning just doesn't prepare kids for college or doesn't allow students to be competitive when getting into college. Can you confirm or deny this?
I just want to start from a student standpoint. Miss Maggart recently said that there were a lot of tears and a lot of arguing. That was me. I've probably fought with Miss Maggart every single day on scales. Whenever we first started, I hated them, and I was like, I don't get it. It's whatever. And so, but now I'm standing here, like, being one of the biggest student advocates for it. I think that it's great, and I think it's the direction our school should take. But saying that it doesn't prepare you for college in real life, I think just isn't fair. We haven't tried it yet, so how do you know? But also, Jameson and I had spoken to a college recruiter during our project, and he had said that all of those vision of a graduate things is what students were missing whenever they were coming to college and why they were failing. And so our school making the transition to teach students those things, earlier, I think is going to prepare them, and teaching them how to fail and how to fail forward is going to be the most helpful thing. Jameson, you can add on more to that.
I think when looking at being prepared for college or your workforce afterwards, what Scales is doing is ultimately giving you a set of tools. It's teaching you what you need to know, and it's showing you and teaching you how to use it in many different ways. So just because we're using a slightly different system than what colleges are, ultimately Scales are showing you how to use your tools in any environment. So it doesn't matter if you are going to college afterwards, you're going straight into a workforce or something else, you know what I mean? Your tools should be able to be used in any way, and that's what Scales is doing. It's saying, hey, this is what I need you to know. Do what you need to show me that you can get there. You know what I mean? Like they said earlier, if it takes you a while to get there, it takes you a while. If you do it really quickly, you're really good at it. That's perfect. But ultimately, we just need you to make sure that you know what you're doing afterwards. You have the skills you need to use it at any time, at anywhere, kind of thing.
So,
Will colleges know?
What?
Will colleges be able to read our transcripts?
Yeah, I'll let Richard talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so this is something I was kind of worried about when I first found out we were switching to Scales. Like, what about my GPA? Because I've always been, like, pushing for that A because GPAs are really important. But, yes, you can still get a GPA and a letter grade. You can average out, oh, I got a 4 in this subject and a 4 in this category, and you can average it out. You get a 3.66 overall, and that can translate to like an A, and that can go on your transcript. So I wouldn't be worried about getting a transcript and showing it to colleges because there is translations. But also in a competency-based system, it's similar to what a lot of colleges and trades are teaching. State Fair's nursing program is completely like competency-based. So when you have these colleges looking at you, like in a competency-based system, I think that makes you stand out to those colleges.
So we are right now in the very early stages of our CBE process. We are hoping and working towards a fully implementing system in the 27-28 school year. So right now, you see many of the teachers in front of us. There's other teachers in the building who are implementing a competency-based system. We have and we are translating our scale scores at this time back to a grade, so the students do have a grade on their grade card, and we'll continue that until we fully implement into a CBE process. One thing that we want to remember, and one thing that I want to do for Smith, Cotton, and Sedalia, is to make it make sense to our students, to our parents, and to our community. So we are building a CBE handbook, and we will be adjusting that handbook. And once we would be ready to implement this system, this will be something that will be explained to parents and students. But I want you to understand, a lot of the work that we are doing on an administrative standpoint is ensuring that all the black and white is answered. So nothing that we, GPAs, if they are needed, they will be there. If grades are needed, they will be there as we transition till we go through this as an entire district. So I don't want parents to fear as they hear and go through this. We will work towards those goals, but we will make sure it makes sense to all of us as we go through that process. So, but we have spoke to colleges. We have talked to MISHA. A lot of students and are involved in activities, and we've talked to MISHA. MISHA doesn't need the grade. They want to know if the student has earned the credit. They want to know the student has learned those systems. So we will make sure that all of it makes sense. I just want everybody to know that as we go through it, Smith Cotton is working towards the CBE process. We are not there yet. We are trying all this stuff, but translating it back to the systems we currently have in place.
Thank you for that. Another question we had was, how will teachers support students who struggle or need extra time to meet a competency? Conversely, what happens if a student is ready to move on and more quickly than their classmates?
I'm going to go ahead and take that one. I teach math here at the Smith Cotton High School, and in my 9th grade courses, I have kids at the math level of a 2nd grader all the way up to the math level of an 11th grader. And so when I started teaching with scales and doing competency-based education, it was just mind-blowing to me when I could sit down and have that conversation with somebody who was on that lower end and was really struggling. And instead of sitting in the classroom silently or even passively, I'm going to take notes, I'll answer as best as I can when I get called on, but truly not understanding what's happening, and they just continue to get passed on, that's where that 2nd grade to 11th grade gap happens. And so being able to have those conversations with my students, I realized they have a huge gap. And what I want them to do is not possible. But I can look at my scale and I can say, okay, let's look at the foundational knowledge at a level 2. Let's look at this as a menu. Where is it that we're missing? And we can kind of pick and choose, and instead of everybody getting the same assessment, I could sit with my students and say, well, let's do this instead. Can we do this? Okay, you could do this. Let's go to the next step, the next foundational skill, until we build up to that target at a level 3. And it was just incredibly motivating, and I've never been so excited to be in the teaching field since my first year of teaching after having that experience, because instead of kids just being completely defeated, that they step into my classroom knowing they're not capable, they're now seeing these options. Not everybody has to be at a 3 on today. I can grow, and not necessarily, it's growth over achievement. Like, we're growing and we're learning. And then on the flip side of that, my students who are ready to take off, they're building this ownership in their education that they've never, not necessarily haven't had to have before. They are ready to move on, and instead of going to the next thing, they are now going deeper. I'm giving them opportunities to get to that level 4 on our standard, which is really extending their knowledge, and it is making them, it's empowering them to their education. I've never had a year where I've seen that kind of growth in my classroom, and it's just been the most exciting thing I could say that I've experienced so far. They're empowered in their own education, they're taking ownership, it's building their confidence, and CBE is just kind of built up to kind of almost work now more in groups instead of a whole class. While I'm working with my kids who are not at the target, I have other groups that are working to go deeper onto that target, and it just has been incredibly motivating, and I'm very excited to be a teacher currently right now. It also wanted to say lifelong learners, because that's what every teacher wants their students to be. And so when they're taking that ownership, whether they're struggling or going deeper into it, it's building that that skill that I'm in charge of my education. And like we said earlier, that the teachers are no longer the ones dishing out all the knowledge. The kids now are being a more active role. And so that's where that kind of plays more into the students' end and on my end. It's very, well, and yeah, thank you for it. Yes, thank you.
Something I was able to witness today that I just think speaks to the power, not only of what is happening inside of Miss Childers' classroom, but just in general here. Everybody kind of knows that she does her groupings a certain way. As she stated, there are a group of students who are a little behind others. Now, we all remember the days of being in school and that fear of, oh no, are people gonna know I'm behind or I don't know this? So today when she announced her groups, everybody knew that the small table is where she sits with the kids who just need that one-on-one assistance. And so she kind of called out the names and the kids moved, and it was just so organic. One of the girls turned around and saw that her friend was sitting over at the table, and she said, "Oh no, friend, I didn't know you were behind. That's okay, I'm gonna help you. Don't worry about it." And it was just like such this great moment of like, it's not the stigma it used to be, and kids who knew that they were confident in their learning were seeing their friends who were behind, and they were like, what the heck, my friend is struggling in this class? Don't worry, I'm gonna catch you up. I mean, the irony is, of course, the teacher was there to catch them up, so that wasn't necessary. But I just thought, like, it's a power to, and you have to understand right now, anything that's happening in this building around proficiency scales is just courageous teachers taking a step forward. There hasn't even really been an obligation to start this work, so you're seeing this happen across classrooms just because some really incredible educators are like, you know what, I want to start this work, I want to get started. So imagine when every classroom in the school is fostering that kind of environment for kids, and you look at these vision of a graduate, self-awareness. It's not just about me anymore. I'm looking around and seeing people I care about that are my friends or my teammates are struggling, and I'm gonna reach out a hand to help them. That is a very different school environment than many of us ever experienced. And it's happening already in the infancy stage of this change that they're making. So I just think that's the beginning of what's to come here. And I think that speaks a lot to not only the education that's going to be provided, but you talk about life and workplace preparedness. You've got to learn to work with people. You've got to learn to lift that person on your team up that needs to get to that deadline that we're all counting on them for. So like kids are starting to learn those skills too, and I don't think we can underestimate how important that is.
Ashley, just real quick, how do these competency-based schools that are already doing it, how do they make sure that there's not students that are 50 steps behind and 50 steps ahead in the same class?
Well, a true competency-based system does not recognize time. Right? A true, fully immersed competency-based system doesn't work on time. So when we think of quarters and semesters and trimesters, they don't use that language. The learning happens at the rate that it happens at. So that means some kids may come in a year and a half and they're finished with high school and they're going to college. Other kids maybe take that 5th year. That's not what's happening in this infancy stage we are here. So how do other schools deal with it? They create flexible scheduling. They create classes, such as one they do run here is PLP, right? Where kids are enrolled in classes and they are moving forward at the pace of their learning and they're not held back by the pace of a semester lasts for 12 weeks. So you're gonna sit in that chair for 12 weeks, right? So that's how other schools have tackled that. Now that's not to say that's gonna be the answer here ultimately. I will give so much credit to the people leading the work here. They listen and they learn. We have had Zoom call after Zoom call with districts who are doing this work to say, what have you tried and how is it working for you? Right, they're really committed to finding the best path forward for Smith Cotton High School because competency-based education, it's not a program. You have to make it your own. You have to have stakeholder input, you have to have community panels, and you have to ask people, what do you want to see? What do you want for your children? If your child is in their 2nd year of high school and we have nothing left to teach them, would you like them to be set free to move on to the next thing, or do you want us to come up with a way to keep them here? And you take that information. So the easy answer is there are many ways to do it. But I think the direct answer is we have to all kind of come together and hold these kind of conversations to figure out what's going to be the best plan here for the community and the parents and the learners in this high school to meet their needs.
How does CBE address the needs of students with learning differences?
Hello, I'm Miss Beck. I teach English 2, 3, and 4. There's a few things I'd like to mention for this one with the learning differences. Personalized pace and mastery before moving on is the first one. I have English 3 students that just completed a unit and we used a scale. And we also just started a unit yesterday. And so with the personalized pace, we have students right now in my class that we introduced it yesterday. I have students that are still working on things from yesterday, some that are working on things from today, and also some that are already wanting to start moving ahead to what we're supposed to be doing tomorrow. And so this, with the learning differences, it really helps support them because you're giving them that personalized pace so that if they need more time to grasp a certain concept, they have it. And then if they're ready to move on to the next thing, they're able to do that as well. Another great part about this with the learning differences would be the varied assessment methods. So my English 3 students, at the very end of the unit we just started, we will have 3 different ways to assess them, and they get to choose which one would be the best way to present that evidence to me. And that part is pretty great as well because some prefer the projects, some prefer presentations, some prefer written proof. And so they get to choose how they show it to me because there's thousands of ways you can show me, the information, but if I'm limiting you to just one, that's not really fair to you. So that part with the varied assessment methods is one of the biggest ones. A supportive learning environment, Okay, so the supportive learning environment, this part is really important. So you will get tailored support from us, specific feedback, tailored assistance when needed, and then this also helps with the guidance that you require. So students with the support in the classroom tend to perform a little bit better because they know they have your support and they can come to you. Every single class I teach, I have students coming up to me to ask me questions for everything that we're doing, and then I help answer them. So them knowing that I'm there to support their learning really makes a difference. And then the focusing on the individual strengths. So instead of focusing on how quickly a student can finish a task or pass a test, CBE recognizes more so their individual strengths and what they're able to perform best at, and then you kind of hone in on those strengths and their abilities and interests, and that can help foster more confidence and motivation in the content area. So those are just a few things with the learning differences. You're really personalizing their education and giving them their own free will to say, this is how I want to show you the information, this is how I can. Or I even had a student during the last unit ask me, can I show this to you a different way? And they presented to me a different way to show that they understood the material, and that worked. They were able to master that standard.
Thank you. So another question we had, how will parents know how their child is doing in a CBE system?
I'll try this one. So in a traditional grade setting, you look and you open the school's grade book system. It used to be hidden, right? Back in the day where you never knew how your kid was doing until mid-quarter grades came out, and then you could find out, or quarter grades, and they were 2 weeks behind because they had to snail mail it to you. And we've gotten a lot better in that we can now at least, students or parents and students can keep up to date online with all their grades, right? So in a CBE system, we're going to focus on the standards. What are the standards for that particular course, and how has your student been working with those standards? Have they met the target of the standard? Have they exceeded the target of the standard? Have they not met the target of the standard quite yet? And so the grading system should hopefully show you basically their scale score is what we call it. Everybody's been talking about the proficiency scales at a level 3, a level 2, a level 4, a level 1. You will get probably some kind of reporting of a 1, 2, 3, or 4, or somewhere in between on that particular scale. It's not going to necessarily be based on a unit. It's not necessarily going to be based on one particular test or just homework. All of the assessments go towards that particular scale and an overall scale score. And we have not really decided as a building yet, I don't think, on how we will approach exact reporting of those things. But on Canvas right now, our grade reporting, well, our kind of grade reporting system, but not like the overall grade reporting system at semester, right? The one you can look at, there is a learning mastery setting where you can look at scores for each scale, and you can look at then each assessment that was linked to that scale, and you can see individual scores for each assessment that are linked to a particular scale. And I'm hoping that's what eventually we maybe kind of get to giving parents at like conferences and stuff. Instead of just reporting a grade, what if we gave you a list of here are all the different scales we have assessed throughout the semester or so far through the semester, and here is where your student stands on each of those particular scales. And I'm hoping that will give parents more feedback to where your student is at that moment, much better than, as Mr. Norton said, what does an A mean nowadays? What does a B mean? Even Bridger said, what did that grade mean to me? Whereas here, when you see, oh, well, they're at a level 3 on this scale, and this scale, wait, 1.5, and you could look at your student right there and go, well, what are you doing to improve on this 1.5 and get to being proficient? It's a specific skill, a specific content piece that you can ask about, that you can be very intentional about, right? We're bringing back all the words already. We're circling back around already for all the good words. So I think that's how hopefully we will start reporting things to parents and find a good way of doing that. So.
Well, and I think another piece is we saw in the rooms we visited today what we call student trackers, which is your students are still getting a worksheet, let's say in their math class. But the difference between I'm getting a worksheet because that's what they passed out, and today I saw kids getting a worksheet, looking at the title of it, and then going over to what we call a student tracker, which is I'm going to complete this worksheet, and when I finish it, I'm going to prove I know this thing that's on this proficiency scale. So if your student were to come home and say, okay, I have a 1.5 on this, it wouldn't be, oh, I didn't turn that worksheet in. It would be, I did, and here are the things that I wasn't able to do, and so I need to study those things, whether that's read more, take notes, work with my teacher. In my experience, again, they mentioned I worked in a high school right outside of Chicago, and we transitioned to this style of learning. The main thing that we noticed, and this is, I don't mean this to be negative, but parents stopped showing up to parent-teacher conferences, and I don't mean that to celebrate, and the answer is why? Because their kid could tell them articulately what they were doing in every class and what they needed to do to change their grade. They didn't need us to tell them anymore about their kids. Their kids were going home saying, I'm at a 1.5 because I don't know this yet. I have to do more reading on that, and I didn't pass that test because blank. So when we surveyed parents of like, why aren't you coming? The response was like, well, I don't need to. My kid's able to tell me exactly where they're at in your class and why they're there, right? So I'll reach out if I need you. And so it was kind of this weird, do we do conferences anymore, right? And we got in this weird space, but then we looked at the positive of like, they're doing it. The kids are owning it, and you don't need a teacher to tell you what your kid is doing because kids could tell their parents, it clearly communicate where they were at and what their grades meant.
And going back to what I said, that's a fundamental shift in the way your student would be thinking about their own learning. Connecting that to what Jameson said with, I know what the skills are I need to do the thing. They can now figure that out all on their own. They don't need one of us telling them you need to do this, this, and this to improve. They will have their own skills on how to improve. And if that doesn't say that you're ready for college or the workplace or military or wherever you want to do, I don't know what does. And that's what Mr. Norton said, was we want to get those students so that they can have those skills to be ready to do whatever. And by knowing yourself, what you can do and what you can't do, what you can show people you can do and where you're at, then that's going to get you where you want to be.
Thank you. Will there still be deadlines, due dates, and accountability for students?
I can start with that one. I'm going to say kind of. If you look on my Canvas, you would see that there are due dates for the assessments that my students do. However, I still let kids turn in stuff from the first month of school. I let kids turn in things from, or even things that we haven't quite done yet. It kind of just matters where they are and how quickly they can give you that evidence. So I have kids who aren't there yet. They can't provide me that evidence. So it's kind of unfair if I were to give them a due date for something that they're not ready to provide for me yet. So Canvas-wise, yes, technically, but in terms of if they've met the target on the scale, that stays open year-round. And I think that's kind of how it needs to be, because you got to touch base on each scale you do, because kids will forget anything that they've learned at the beginning of the year that hasn't been touched on since. So evidence is something that needs to be gathered year-round, all the time, and sometimes that means they can give it to me tomorrow, sometimes they can't quite yet, but there is no quite due date for it. And as for accountability for students, you know, they have to provide that evidence. They have to show you what they can and can't do. So the accountability is kind of put into their hands. If they can show you that they understand it, cool, that's great. If they can't, then you got to figure out where to meet them and how they can show you where they're currently at. I think my kids are a lot more accountable now, especially because I've kind of put the learning into their hands, and where however they can give me that evidence, whether it be like this kid who is in track currently, who drew a track on my board, to say, well, this is like this managerial accounting thing. And I was like, well, if that makes sense to you, I don't get it, but that's how you understand it. That's the evidence you've provided for me. That shows me you understand what you're talking about. So, yeah, kind of depends. So,
I think it's going to look different in the future. That accountability and due dates and deadlines will still be there, but they'll be like more flexible. We're already seeing like the accountability part is already changing. Instead of teams and clubs just looking at grades if you're passing or failing, they're now reaching out to teachers saying, hey, is this student making progress? And that's what I think will change when it comes to accountability. We're looking at if they're progressing and not necessarily if they're at if they have the grade. And I think that's the whole CBE goal is we're looking at what's being learned, not if they've met some due date that everybody at the same day has to have accomplished it.
I was just going to add, she's been doing this all year. I just completed and started a unit, but we had like an assessment window. So like there was this week where they were turning in assessments and I was providing feedback, and then I gave them, the overall score from that scale. And then after we finished it last week, I had students this week asking, I know that window closed, but can I still turn this in? And I said, yes. I was like, if you look at your feedback, because every rubric where I scored them, I gave feedback, especially if they didn't meet the 3.0, the target. And they are like excited because they said, oh, I know we finished this, but I can still continue to show you evidence. And I said, yes. So the whole due date thing, like we had windows, but they're still able to show me that evidence through like May 21st if they choose to. And that's the accountability part as well. Like it's back in their hands. But each student knows that they can still show me more evidence if they want to show mastery on that target. So they were looking at all the feedback. If they liked it, like they were set in that score. But if they want to improve, they're allowed to do that. But they have to show me.
Okay, so we're gonna now open it up for your guys' questions. Miss McKinney, could you please share any that came up in the stream or during? Okay, so I'm gonna repeat Miss McKinney's question. What concerns do you commonly hear from parents and students about CBE, and how do you respond?
All right, I'll go ahead and answer this. This was probably when Ashley was talking about parents not coming to parent-teacher conferences. I had the most parents I've had in a long time come to parent-teacher conferences, but it was also the quickest parent-teacher conferences I've ever had, because once I explained that your student is doing okay in my class, because they saw that the kids were failing my class because of the way our grading system works, and parents can't see the right end of it, and still teaching students how to show the parents the grade book that they need to see. So once I explained to parents that here's your scales, here's the learning targets that your student needs, and here's where they are, and they've met them all, they were fine. They understood. I had, one kid who's like, I'm like, well, why is your scale score so low in this? He's like, well, I haven't finished, or I need to understand how to use the pen tool better. I mean, super simple, very easy. So going back to the question, sorry. I think parents are like, my kid's far behind because I have a D or because I'm failing, but really they're not. I know, like, I email other teachers for sports or activities, and just ask, are they on level? And I think that's probably parents' biggest concern, is because we're so ingrained. We all learned that, oh, everybody wants an A or a B, or I'm an A student, why do I have a D? So yeah.
Okay, I also want to ask all of you guys now, you don't have to go to Miss McKinney, if you have any questions. We want you guys, the whole purpose of this is to turn your concern into a question before it becomes a problem. So if you have anything, just go ahead and ask it.
Mhm. Mhm. Master, yeah.
Yes. So that is, we are going to start this summer. So our plan has sped up because as we have been learning and writing the scales, tying our assessments to those scales, we've had educators that said, I want to try this. So one thing I want parents to know and families to know, everything that we are trying is not going to hurt your students academically, GPA-wise. When you see that when she talked about and she said the letter grade of a D, we are working hand in hand to make for sure that right now as we are practicing or we are transitioning, nothing's going to hurt the student as we go through it. So we will make sure that all that is there. But this summer, we're going to build a CBE handbook. That will be a handbook that when we implement this, it will be something that will be explained to the students, sent home to parents. We will have nights like this where we will have people in and answer questions. It's going to be like starting from ground zero. Right now, in July, you all get the parent handbook, and it is something that you all just click the button and say, I've read the parent handbook. I know they can't do this. I know they can't do that. This will be us. We will be working as hard as we can to get information out saying, here's our handbook. For the next 2 years, we will do trial run on handbooks where we will be calling parents in and we'll be asking you to come in. Hey, here's a handbook we're looking at. Give us some feedback. Where are we missing the boat? Where are we not giving you enough information? Where are we giving you too much information? So our plan is over these next 2 years is to build that handbook, and then it will be signed, sealed, and delivered with parent feedback, with student feedback, with teacher feedback, and then we will implement it in that 27-28 school year. So as we go through it, yes. There will be, you will see some departments that will move before that, but as a building, as a fully implemented CBE building, we will not transition to that into a 27-28 school year. So right now, Your students that are, any student in this building who is a sophomore, junior, or senior, they will continue to get a traditional grade. They will continue to have, they will get the GPA, they will follow the same graduation requirements that we have. Nothing's going to change. Teachers trying it, the teachers and the students might be getting 2 grades. They might be getting that scale score and a grade for that class, but nothing's going to adjust from that. The current freshmen, they will be seniors when we're going to be implementing this, so we'll be working in that transition plan of how we do it. So there's still requirements. Yes, correct. So one question we didn't get to was, what are our next steps? So I know that this, because it was brought up, there can be, and there are probably several students traditionally that could go through our courses, what is required for high school, and get done very quickly in 2.5 years. If you, I mean, you really can. If you've got 4 Englishes, you have 3 maths, you have 3 sciences, you can get a math class in 8th grade. You can come to summer school to get some of these things. So if you wanted to, we have students that graduate their junior year. We have students that graduate at the end of first semester of their senior year. Our goal with CBE would be, if we do have students that are ready to move faster and not on a traditional semester scale and they want to work quicker, we don't want to graduate them. We want to open up our building to, so you want to go to college? Okay. Instead of, I don't want to say wasting your time, but if you were to talk to some seniors right now, there are seniors here that the only reason they are here is because they need 1 English credit. They need 1 English credit. Agreed? So we have started with pink lanyards. They have pink lanyards where they can go to the library. We're giving them some more freedom because they are bored out of their minds going, why am I taking this class? I don't need it. I've already met my graduation requirements. In a CBE setting, what I would hope it would look like is, if we have those students who are moving faster or on pace, then their junior and senior year, they will truly have an open schedule. If they are someone in the fine arts, they might spend their whole day down in that E-wing in the drama department because they already have their English credits done and they can focus on their passion. Or if they want to go and they want to get a AA degree and graduate with their AA degree and a high school diploma, they can go out and they will spend the day like a college student and still be a Smith Cotton student here. If they want to go into the workforce, CAPS, CTC will not be something right now. We're trying to fit that into their schedule. In a CBE setting, that will be so wide open, they could do both, possibly, if that's their passion. If they want to go into the workforce, we can provide them ways where they can get internships, mentorships as they're working. So yes, to your simple question was, there will be a handbook and we will have learning sessions for parents and students to get all this done. Go for it.
Yeah,
Algebra 2.
Yeah.
Are you allowing those kids to have 3 math classes potentially in the same year as they move that fast?
So we have, right now we have what is called PLP, which is a personalized learning path. Program path, I'm going to get it mixed up, I'm talking fast. But what that allows them to do, it allows them to go at their own pace. So right now we have students that come in and they start with algebra or they're starting with geometry, and we have had a student this year who, what did he start with? Our goal, we thought.
Geometry, and he's almost done with algebra 2.
Which one is the one with pre-calc?
Oh my gosh.
Mr. Tankersley.
Clayton.
Yeah.
Yes,
Well,
he started in algebra 2.
so we thought that a student could maybe get 2 math classes done in a year. What we're finding out, there are some students who are looking to try to accomplish possibly 3 math classes. So yes, we are building that in where they could take 3 math classes with it, but it's only taking up 1 hour on their schedule.
So how are we, I shouldn't say you, how are we motivating the kids that can't keep up, like 2nd grade versus 11th grade or algebra 2? If they're in your class, there's going to be kids that can't
Yes, I'm going to go ahead and take this one. That goes back to with those scales and being able to really personalize what they need. They're going to start seeing success probably for the first time in years in whether it's a math classroom or another classroom, and just meeting the kids where they are instead of saying, I want you here at the end of the year no matter what. Now we're coming down to where they are and we're bringing them up. Now if that takes more than a year to get them where we need, at least we're bringing them up. It's better than just passing them along or saying this is an unachievable goal that we've set for you. So on the flip side of what Mr. Norton was talking about, one of the math teachers on the PLP team, and we've had students who have taken 3 semesters to get a credit of math. And that's just the pace that they're working at because you can't progress until you master it. So I think that's where we're going to see those gaps won't be so wide if we're truly a CBE system, because we're going to meet them and then bring them up and then.
What I hear her asking, though, Tessa, is they've got to have 3 credits to graduate.
Okay, yes.
If they can't get it by their senior year, so what are we going to do?
That's a great question.
So it would be that student's schedule would be looked at, where their weakness is at. Like I talked about, PLP takes up 1 hour. Maybe they need 2 hours of math. Maybe they need that block where they have more time to focus on math, and we take away something that they are and have accomplished. So they might be weak in math, but they might be strong in science or social studies, so they can accomplish this task quicker and be able to spend more time here, and it's not just set in stone where you have to have this class for this hour. We could build a schedule for that kid where they have 2 math classes just working on that 1 credit.
But that adjustment would be made sooner rather than
Correct.
waiting until their senior year.
Correct.
Yes.
Right now, however fair or not fair, a student fails Algebra 1, the next year they either retake Algebra 1, look at a lower level math class to take, and hopefully accomplish and pass that one. Some students fail that second math class, and they go on to a third math class or try that lower level math class again. We get to their senior year, we look at options of credit recovery, where we try to find a lower level math class that is taught online for that student to catch them up. So are we closing the gap that way? No, but we're accomplishing the task of graduation. We feel in the CBE setting, we can close a gap and keep those students on target and graduating with their cohort.
Well, and I think something that Mr. Norton is touching on but not saying is the system we have now, if they don't pass it, we do a full reset. Like, we play Mario, you go all the way back to the beginning. Whereas in this system, let's say the semester ends and they're not with Ms. Childers anymore, they switch to another math teacher. They go with that record, those scales, where she's marked like, okay, here's everything that they know tangibly on paper, so please don't start back at the beginning. It's a new semester, but start here, right? And so the gaps can eventually be closed. So let's say we're in semester 2 and it's a month in and now they get it. Now we can move them into the next thing because we're not going all the way back to the beginning, which unfortunately we've been doing for years and years. They just retake the whole class over from the beginning. So there may still be kids who don't achieve the credit in the time allotted, but when we tag to the next person, that very distinctive academic record goes with, and that person just picks up where they left off. So that's how you kind of, pick up the pace, so to speak, and get them back on track. Yeah.
So is everything online then? I guess that was one of my questions. Because in order for you to know whether they master or don't master, I assume there's got to be some sort of test.
Correct. So what would happen really, I think, because you were asking a question initially like, will we know? If your student gets enrolled in freshman algebra semester 1 or for freshman algebra for the year, you're going to be able to access those proficiency scales as a parent and as a student to say, okay, freshman algebra is these 6 things. I click a button, I can see from day 1 my kid's going to have to master these 6 topics. I'm just using a small number. Right? So then if your student gets a grade in the grade book and it says they're at a 2.0 on the topic of addition, you could pull that up at home and say, okay, what does that mean? Right? And maybe it turns out you look at it and you're like, hey, I understand this. I could help my kid. Right? And maybe you're like, well, I don't, but now I can see where they're at and I have a lot of parents who have the ability to help on their own. I have others who say, I don't, but I have some money to hire a tutor. So imagine it's outside of school and you want to catch your kid up. Instead of paying a person to take a guess, Your kid could hand them that academic record to say, this is where I'm stuck. And that person could come in and give them support on the exact thing, the gap that they have, and that moves a lot more quickly, right? So what Mr. Meyer was touching on is we don't have the reporting and scoring perfect yet because we're living in two kind of worlds where people are expecting a grade to look like this and we're trying to make a grade look like this. But we have kids in every single room tracking and marking, and they know exactly where they're at. And that can transfer home to you, that can transfer to a tutor, to anybody of support. Okay, so I think that clarity, if you look on a grade book now and it's like, what's worksheet 2? That's gonna look very different, right? It's like, here's the standard you're focusing, oh, you're at this level. You could pull that scale at home and say, oh, that means this, right?
Okay, we're gonna take one more question. We're running a little bit over on time, but is there anything else? Yes.
Okay, so I have a question. It's in the concern of like retention of information. Whenever students, like you're saying, you have students who are passing 2 math classes in a year. So say they're done with calculus by the end of their sophomore year. How do we make sure that they're still remembering that 2 years later when it comes to their freshman year of college? Because we're not set up yet as a whole to where they're graduating high school in 2 years. So how are we still making sure that they contain that information for the next couple of years before they get to college?
From an administrative standpoint, we would work individually with that student and we would move them on at the pace they're at. We would not hold them back for 2 years.
But also, as a CAP student, we use scales every day. And first semester, we evaluated certain scales, and then second semester, we're not evaluating those same scales. But your evaluation never stops. You can always come back to it and present evidence. If I did kind of bad on one scale, like I got a 2 on professionalism, and then I was like, oh, but I really don't have enough evidence and I kind of just don't want to do it right now, I'll just do it next semester. Then I can come back to it and present my evidence the new evidence that I have, and I can be like, I'm at a 3 and this is why. Please change my grade. And they'll do that for me. So it never stops. You have to go back to it and you have to keep touching on it or else you lose it. I could not tell you what I learned in the first semester of pre-calc this year, but I could tell you what I did in the first semester of CAPS.
I think also building on that, you bringing your own evidence forward and you taking a hold of your own learning, it sticks with you a lot more than just doing a worksheet. So sure, we might be moving quicker through things, but I've put more effort, more thought into what I'm doing. It holds a lot better inside of my head, at least for me, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's not just going through the motions. It's not just doing a worksheet and saying I've learned it. I've actually had to put my own thought into it. And on top of that, some things I've learned in a way that makes sense for me. So I can do things that make sense. Really, it makes sense. It's the biggest thing I can say is things make a lot more sense when you do it your way. And I think that's what CBE really helps with.
So we're going to wrap it up, but could each of you panelists sum up your advice to parents and students in 5 words or less? Let's start with Ms. Maggart.
Come along for the ride. We're going to have some fun.
Good enough.
Ask questions, stay involved, and be informed.
All right, Bridger.
Have fun and be happy.
It's okay to fail at first. We'll figure it out.
I think that was more than 5, Jameson. Yeah. That's all right. Mine has 5, and it says the same thing as Jameson. I cheated off of his paper. Failure is not the end.
Okay, I'm going to go with focus on growth over focus on grades.
I would tell parents to stay curious and have a solution-orientated. So be curious and solution-orientated, 5 words.
I'm going to say praise effort, not just results.
Okay, I'll finish this off. Give it a chance.
Sorry, Miss Henderson. Actually, I'm going to finish this off. Trust the process. It'll be okay. Anyways, we want to thank each and every one of you guys for, oh, okay, it was 6, whatever. We want to say thank you to everybody who came to this panel, who supported us, all the teachers, all the parents, all the community members. Thank you to everybody watching. We will be sharing additional resources and updates as we continue this transition, so please check our social media and your email. Have a wonderful night, everyone.